Greetings. Part 2 of our study today continues. Thank you for joining One Word Advent Ministry, and the subject is time. We're going to conclude this passage, prophecy that is based on Daniel chapter 8 and also Daniel chapter 12. So, again, I'm going to use my trump-up chart, and I hope the camera is picking it up clearly. By way of review, we did look at the times that were predicted, 70 years that they spent in Babylon, the Jews, that is. And then what marks the beginning of that 70 years was 457 BC, when Artaxerxes delivered the third and final decree to rebuild Jerusalem, to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. That, of course, was marking the end of the 70 years that Jeremiah predicted they would spend in Babylon. Then began another block of time. Remember our topic, one word, time. I'm sure you agree that's a good thing, to dissect and to analyze one word of Bible prophecy at a time in order to have a full view of what God is saying to us. Another block of time was issued for the Jews as a time of probation, started at the time when the 70 years ended. And that was 490 days, which is 490 years. And of course, when we calculate that, 490 or 457 from 490, it will complete all the years that were left in BC. Take it down to year 0. Then you'll have to count from year 0 going up in AD to find out where that time ended. It, of course, ends at the Messiah. It ends at the Messiah, and we discover that the 1 week, the last week, 69 weeks would have come to the baptism, but the 1 week that was left was split in two. 3.5 years to his crucifixion, and then from his crucifixion, 2.5 years to his, ascension, or the stoning of Stephen. He actually, you know this story right there. That was a rejection of Christ. The stoning of Stephen indicated that, and of course Christ rejected the Jewish nation. They no more was responsible for the oracle of God. That things had changed then. And because we're dealing with a block of time which is 2,300 years, we correctly subtract the first part, predicted part, which is 490. It leaves us with 1810. The year 1810, since we are in 34 AD, 1810 AD, add 34 AD gives us our date. 1844. 1844, the end of the period, the time when this prophecy was fulfilled, this cleansing of the sanctuary. Now today, we plan to look at a few dates that we have under here. And so you look at them, 509, and we have 1290 years, we have 1335 years. Of course, we have 1260 years. I shall read for you that first one, 1260. Of course, you're familiar with that. It's taken from Daniel chapter 12. We're going to be dealing with Daniel chapter 12. And the reason why we are doing this is because we're establishing what movement came on the stage in 1844, which is evidence that God has made a shift in terms of how the people is using, or is about to use, or bestow his truth on them to carry on and to represent him in the world, to demonstrate his character. So we are establishing from this time prophecy that these dates are crucial to understand, because then we will know that the movement that came on stage at that particular date, at that particular time, is God's true church. I repeat, the movement that came on stage based on the fulfillment of this prophecy of Daniel, 2300 days, is the movement that God is leading through. And I said leading through because he's caring, he cares about every single person on this earth. But his method is to use one group of people, to call them and ordain them, appoint them and anoint them to represent him to the other folk. So he has no partiality, he has no preference in this manner. It's just his method, and we have to understand God's method in order to rightly understand these numbers. It's like mathematics. You have to understand the method to be able to calculate these numbers. All right, so it says here in Daniel 12 and verse 7, "And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times, and a half, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard," verse 8, "and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things?" So Daniel was pretty perturbed. Slide my camera out of position. Daniel, or maybe in position. Daniel was pretty disturbed, the fact that he didn't know how long. But remember, we answered the part of that question early on in the first part of this study. How long is a pertinent question. We are endeavoring to give the complete answer, and that is, we are looking at a period of time, 1260 years, that was calculated from 538 to 1798. That was referred to as the age of the dark ages of religion. So we have let's move on through this study so we get an understanding of where we are. And I'm going to go to Daniel chapter 12. Again, it says, and I'm going to go to these numbers. And from the time that the daily sacrifice, Daniel 12, 11 and 12. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. That's different from that block of time that we earlier mentioned. 1,290 days, but they all tie together. So write these down, just as I have them on the chart here. Okay. I have a 1290 years right in this slot. Notice that we have some line corresponding or parallel with the AD line, because we are taking blocks of time out of AD and see where they end. They of course end, as we have seen before, 1844. So, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. So there's a blessing pronounced on those who will wait to the end of 1335 years. Now the question is, what was the blessing? This is another block of time from within the 2300 days. Right? But we don't have to go back to BC line, we can concentrate on AD line. So, as I said before, it's another block of time that is taken out of the 2300 days or 2300 years. Beginning from the time the daily is abolished and the abomination set up, the daily represents something which should not have been abolished. And the abominations represent something that should not have been set up. Because, as we know, the word sacrifice is supplied. So the daily was abolished, and of course another day was set up. Another system was set up. It should be noticed, however, that a promised blessing is really the cleansing of the sanctuary. And in conjunction with the question, in relation to that question, how long? A blessing is coming. A blessing is coming at the end. I said, blessed are those who wait until the 1335. So the 1335 days or years would begin after the 1335 days or years expire. That's when it says that the sanctuary be cleansed. So the point I'm making here, that the promised blessing does not begin until after the 1335 days or years expire. So a 1335 year is plugged in to this period of time, and the blessing will not come about until it expire. And that's why here we have to find out the time. We are given the 1335, so it's easy now to find out what time where did it begin in history? Or where did it begin in relation to the 2300 days? And what we simply did, and remember, we're using a method to establish that the blessing comes at the end. Those who wait until the end will experience the blessing, which is a cleansing. How long? Until such time. The cleansing we discovered now that we have established that it is 1844. Okay, whatever the blessing is, everything was established there. Then we have to deduct 1335 in order to take us back to where this block of time begins. It brings us to minus 1844 minus 1335 gives you 509. 509. All right? So 509 was a date in history, and in this block of time that is very important to us. And we go on in this study, we see what that is. Now, since the 2300 year period begins in 457, okay, 457 BC, with the commandment to restore and to rebuild the city Jerusalem. The 2300 days consequently end in 1844. The time the 1335 days ended. Then the days of the blessings begin. Okay? Now to ascertain the prophetic time when the seventh day Sabbath, the daily, and the truth, the sanctuary, were trodden underfoot, and the Sunday observance with its pagan priesthood set up in their stead, it would be necessary to subtract 1335 years from 1844, which would point us back to 508, 509 AD. Dealing with the Hebrew calendar, we come to 508. In that year, the daily, the Sabbath, and the sanctuary truth were cast down to the ground, and the abomination, the Sunday, was set up. So make no bones about it. 508, dealing with the Jewish calendar. All right? So we have this date, 508, and then remember we are left with another date. 1335, at the end of it, the blessing began. That means everything was restored, and that was a blessing. The sanctuary, cleansing of the sanctuary began. So we naturally subtract that to go back in time. Going back in time, it points us to 508. Now, in order to go forward, to establish this date 508, we run into a situation where, okay, the question would be asked, if the things were trampled on in 508, therefore the question is 508 to 1798 is more than 1260 years. So what happened? In order to understand the truth of the 1290 years, add this figure to 508, which points forward to 1798, which we did. 508 plus 1290 points us up to 1798. And that's what I have there. You read that up in Daniel 7, Daniel 12. But we have 538. Why 508 and 538? 508 was when the truth were trampled underfoot, but 538 was the formal establishment of the system, the pagan system. So this is a preparatory work. Preparatory work, it commences here, but not until 538 it was fully established. And when it was fully established, then we get that period of the Dark Ages of religion started. And that's where we get the block of time, which is 1260 years of Dark Ages. All right? So hopefully you are blessed by this. All these dates are in Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 12, and they have established to us in very clear view that the movement that was predicted is prophetically predicted to come on stage in 1844. Mark that date, 1844. Mark the date or the time, 2300 days. A block of time thrown to Daniel. He prayed very sincerely in order to understand it. It was broken down in pieces, in blocks of time, and we saw where, first of all, it chopped off 490, and that takes us to the stoning of Stephen. Then we also saw that in calculating from the stoning of Stephen, it would take us to add in 34 to 1810, which was the balance after taking away 490, would have taken us to 1844. So 1844 was a block of time that whatever movement came on the stage was God's predicted movement, prophetic movement, prophesied movement, and it is one that was endowed with the truth to move God's people forward. A blessing was pronounced at that time, which began at that time. The blessing was pronounced on the basis of 1335 years. Subtract 1335 years from 1844, it takes you back to 508. Of course, you'll get 509, but prophetically speaking, in terms of the date, the Jewish calendar, it would have been 508 proper. Adding 508 with 1290, which is another block of time within this period, that would point you to actually a period 1798, which was the end of the Dark Ages, end of that period. So going forward, of course, we established that 508 was the time when the truth were trampled and cast down and the abomination set up, but it was not fully set up and formalized, become formal establishment of that power until 538, and 538, of course, the new religious bondage started. One word, time. Way to go. God bless you, and please forward this tape. Make sure you study it, study for yourself as we just give the hint, and let us continue. One word at a time. I'm sure you agree. That's a good thing. God bless you.